and welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this video and the other content here, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you want to be a part of our community, we have a Discord server which will be linked below in the description. But without further ado, sit back, take a deep breath, and relax. And I hope you enjoy the video. Hello, and welcome to another session of me nerding out. You guys asked for another video of me doing this, so I'm doing it. And trying to get this book ready. So I'm gonna first thing, well, at least this is the plan, right? Firstly, I am going to go over the two legions that I ended up picking. Trust me, it was difficult to narrow it down, but I'm quite happy with the two that I've chosen, and the paint schemes I have already tested out for both of them, and they have ended quite well. So I'm going to introduce you to them. But firstly, what I have here, which I haven't done in a while in a video, is, well, I haven't done it in a while in a video because I was away for a month in Thailand, but, you know, never mind. But I have my English rose candle here. Made for me by my good friend and now that the god-forsaken heat wave in this country is over, I can light a candle without cooking myself to a nice medium rare. Love the woodwork. It's just that gentle crackling. It's so nice. So good, so good, so good. Let me put it to the side. I'll move my drink over here because I'm still a very thirsty boy. Not in that way. Don't take that the wrong way. Well, I am a very thirsty boy in that way too, but that's not the point of this. That's not the subject we're on today. We're here to relax and chill, not talk about me. Lovely. Right. So, onwards to the two that I chose. So, I'm gonna scroll through this till I find it. I will read fully the pages on the ones that I chose, just so you guys get a nice idea of the lore behind them, because the lore is part of the reason why I chose them. Here we go. So, we have, firstly, I picked one loyalist and one traitor pick, although, I mean, I suppose I can play them as either loyalist or traitor, because there are loyalist and traitor elements of all legions. But I did try to pick one loyalist and one traitor, so here we go. The first one I chose was the 7th Legion, Imperial Fists. The Imperial Fists were driven foremost by the ideals of unity. They stood alone as a pillar of stability upon which the foundations of the Imperium were built. they were ever true, unswerving from the toll demanded by war, and bearing the weight of loyalty without breaking. To the imperial fists, no sacrifice in the line of duty was too grave, and they refused to flinch in the fulfillment of their oaths. They were the noblest exemplars of the highest ideals and aspirations of humanity, and for this reason they stood by the Emperor's side more than any other legion during the Great Crusade. As instruments of his will, and in the Imperium's time of greatest need, it would be the unyielding imperial fists who were its final defence. Theirs was a legion of stoic crusaders, architect war masons, and voidsmen without equal. The imperial fists were masterful in both attack and defence, fighting with unshakable discipline and with methodical application of force. As the Imperium expanded ever outwards, they were to be found always at the leading edge, embodying the Great Crusade's spirit and constructing mighty fortresses at the sites of their victories to act as much as garrisons, as beacons of unification. As my skin literally sticks to the page. I suppose that was a nice peeling sound, but not exactly pleasant for me to experience. So their Primarch, Primogenitor, Rogaldorn, their Cognomen, Prior Nun, informally the Stone Men, the Iceborn, Sentinels of the Void, and the Defenders of Terror, and his Protectors. Observe strategic tendencies, shipborne assaults and boarding actions, defensive and fortification operations in extremis, stronghold assaults, the conquest and force compliance of void-faring civilizations, their noteworthy domains, Terror, Inwit, and the Solar Domains, their allegiance, Fidelitas Totalis, which means total loyalty, I presume. I don't know. I don't speak fake Latin. I don't know if this is real Latin, but most of 40k uses fake Latin. Stuff that just kind of like sounds like it's Latin, but it's not. It just makes it sound fancier. So, we have a couple pages here, and I will read through all of them, even though it is quite a chunk of text. But this video is designed for me to be in the background, so you can kind of just listen in or completely ignore me while you're doing whatever you're doing. It's up to you. Zealous Crusaders. The 7th Legion was created to secure and consolidate the realms of mankind, beginning with the newly conquered territories of the Unification era. It drew recruits from every region of Terra. The Legion's gene seed implantation inflicted intense pain, and only the hardiest stock was suited to surviving such a process. Nonetheless, few initiates lived to become legionnaires, and those that did were taciturn, dour, and grim of nature. At their root, the Space Marines of the 7th Legion were crusaders. In war, they sought conquest with a focused hunger, favouring massed shock assaults, using their full array of weaponry. Multiple battalions often took to a field en masse, breaking our enemies with hammer-blow force. They were the very hand of the Emperor that descended and gripped worlds with an unbreakable fist, a feat for which he honoured the Legion with its name. But simple victory was not enough. To conquer, one had not only to defeat one's enemies, but to hold the prize of that victory. The 7th Legion would raise bastions within days of victory. And across the galaxy, their fortresses gazed down on those who dwelt in the land around, a constant sign that the strength which had conquered them remained, rooted into the earth. These fortresses solidified conquests, and ordered domains sprang up around them, replacing what had been broken with something far stronger. After each conquest, more warriors were inducted into the legion. However, the seventh did not linger, but drove ever on, without pause or respite, nor did it administer or draw up and enforce laws. The imperial fists were warriors of the Imperium, not its masters, and they existed only to serve in war and die for its ideals. The foundations of Imperium. The discovery of its Primarch and the planet which had raised him only strengthened the character of the Imperial Fists, and their integration was swift and complete. The Legion's organization aligned with the strictures of the Principia Bellicosa set down by the Emperor, for Dawn was practical, seeing no need to change an effective structure. Its numbers remained largely stable throughout the Crusade, in the region of 100,000 warriors, subdivided into many companies ranging in size from a handful of squads to several hundred Space Marines, the numbers of which waxed and waned due to battlefield attrition and recruitment. These companies were grouped into flexible battalions based on the needs of particular deployments rather than as standing formations, and larger battalions were called a crusade or household. Company-level captains were functionally the most senior ranks in the Imperial Fists hierarchy, with every warrior in the Legion obedient directly to Rogel Dawn, and above him to the Emperor. However, while Dawn maintained no fixed inner circle of advisors, his council was whoever stood beside him in battle. He honoured many captains of skill and merit with additional authority. Commanders of appointed theatres were given temporary titles and afforded the greatest respect. These were the marshals, fleet masters, and siege masters. Lord Castellans were senior masters of defence appointed to garrison and hold conquered sectors of space, and Lord Seneschals were responsible for the crusading strategies of whole spheres of the galaxy. Above these stood the first captain, Sigismund, renowned as the greatest warrior of the age. Sigismund was the master of the Temple of Oaths, which bound each legionary to their purpose, and of the first company, the Templar Brethren, which numbered 1,000 warriors, each a tempered exemplar of the spirit of the Legion and the Great Crusade. Many other storied veteran subdivisions formed in the Legion over the course of the Great Crusade, such as the Phalanx Warders, specialists in desperate confines of Zone Mortalis warfare, whose charge was the defence of the Legion's flagship, the Phalanx, and the Huscarls, an elite bodyguard cadre sworn to the singular purpose of defending Rogel Dawn himself. So we learnt a bit about Sigismund there. If you do not know, I mean you probably don't know, Sigismund's a fucking badass. We stand Sigismund. If you're going to take, very few things away from the lore I'm giving you here, I want you to remember in your mind. So if anyone ever mentions 40k to you, you've just got these lines on reflex that I've taught you, right? And one of them, Sigismund's a badass. Sigismund is a badass. Sigismund is a badass. Okay, remember it. So, the Imperial Fists, these are the guys with the yellow colour scheme. And I don't really regret choosing them. Yellow is a colour I've struggled with before, but I found a technique, and I've recently bought an airbrush as well, so it's made it a lot easier, and I do have a miniature right here in front of me. That is, it's turned out wonderfully, a wonderful, deep yellow. colour. And I'm very happy and very excited to paint an army like that. But anyway, allow me to continue. Favoured by terror and the manufactora of soul. Oh, the manufactoria of soul, my apologies. The Imperial fists were blessed with the cutting edge of Imperial war gear and technologies, and were often the legion chosen for testing advanced weaponry, such as the assault cannon. They were amongst the strongest proponents of the development of tactical dreadnought armor. Another thing, so Terminator armor is awesome. I love Terminator armor. I actually prefer the old patterns of Terminator armor over the modern one. So there are different, like the regular power armor, there are different marks, but instead of like with power armor, it's Mark 1, 2, 3, 4. These ones are just named. So the one you've got in the current 40k setting is Indomitus pattern tactical dreadnought armor, otherwise known as Terminator armor, because tactical dreadnought is far too long to say. And the ones you have in 30k, which I prefer, are the Cataphracti. Some people say Cataphracti. I say Cataphracti. I don't really care which one you say. Cataphracti pattern and the Tartarus pattern. And the Tartarus one, most people prefer Cataphracti, but I actually prefer Tartarus because they literally look like mini dreadnoughts, right? Because obviously tactical dreadnought armor, there are these armored walker vehicles known as dreadnoughts, and what tactical dreadnought armor is supposed to be a smaller, more maneuverable dreadnought. Obviously that's manned by a person rather than being, part machine, part man, but I'm not going to go into the lore of dreadnoughts. That's going to take too long, and I will be diverged for many, many minutes. So I prefer Tartarus pattern because it looks like mini Contemptor dreadnoughts. The armor just looks like mini Contemptor dreadnoughts, and I not only think that is like badass as fuck and also appropriate, but I think they look adorable. I just think they look like cute little mini dreadnoughts, and I'm all here for it. But anyway, they were amongst the strongest proponents of the development of tactical dreadnought armor, and fielded a significant number of squads equipped in all variants of Terminator armor. Furthermore, they fielded a large complement of heavy tanks and more dreadnoughts than many of their brother legions, the hardiness of their legion stock contributing to the high survival and internment rate. Okay, that kind of forces me. I kind of have to talk a little bit about dreadnoughts now. So dreadnoughts are life support machines? Yeah? Imagine if the life support machine was a giant mechanical war machine that let you equip a myriad of weapons and made you multiple meters tall and a bit of a beast on the battlefield. Yeah, that's what it is. So when a Space Marine, or a Legionnaire in this case, I mean they're still technically Space Marines, but I'm trying to be 30k appropriate here rather than 40k appropriate. When a Legionnaire gets injured, critically so, you can't, because if you lose a limb or something, they can replace it with a bionic one. But this is like, their body's just totally ruined. But you can still save them. So what they do is they inter you into a dreadnought, which keeps you alive, for one, so your knowledge and your experience can remain. But also, what it means is you can still fight. And if you ever experience a 40k meme, well, a very popular quote from a game is, I'm trying to remember, I've suddenly forgotten it, of course I have, only in death does duty end, which is a quote from 40k and Warhammer in general, but it was very popularised by this game because you'd be commanding this dreadnought and it would walk around like, only in death does duty end, and like start blasting a bitch, and it was great. But anyway, I shall attempt to continue without further diversions. The last great facet of the Legion was the strength of its fleet. This comprised of over 1,500 capital warships under direct command, and many more bonded by oath and fealty. This naval might was the greatest of any of the Legionis Astartes, and was further enhanced by the fact that many of the ships were the largest in the Imperium. One of these, the greatest, was the Phalanx, a pre-Imperial relic of vast size and unimaginable power that dwarfed entire attack fleets by comparison. The Phalanx was, perhaps, the largest mobile battle station in the Imperium, more battle station than ship, and served as the Imperial Fist's principal base of operations in the Great Crusade. The Imperial Fists also built many space forts, and were the preeminent masters of high-intensity ship-to-ship warfare in the Cold Void, seeing a space battle as a natural extension of a siege, divorced from gravity and in 3 dimensions. At the very end of the Great Crusade, Dawn and his legion returned to Terra to guard and fortify the seat of Imperial power. Across the northern segmentum solar, Dawn erected and coordinated the Gauntlet of Stone, a line of defence which would hold the traitor onslaught for a decade across the vital void channel of Paramar Beta Garman and Lauren Alpha. The Legion would fight bitter and desperate defences, and was instrumental to the loyalist efforts at the Imperial core. When Horus brought his hordes to Terra, Rogel Dawn commanded the Imperium's defiance, and without the sacrifices of the Imperial Fists, all might have been lost. Now a little bit about the Primarch himself, Rogel Dawn. Inwit is a world of death and merciless cold, home to warring nomadic ice clans. Inwit's denizens are not unsophisticated. Rather, their world is consciously preserved to teach its denizens strength. Long ago, the people of Inwit carved their own realm from the stars, conquering dozens of worlds. Yet their rulers chose to keep the old ways, living harsh lives like their vassals. It was there that Rogel Dawn ruled. His qualities married perfectly with those of hard, cold Inuit, and he pushed its empire further, ordering its armies and fashioning spacecraft the like of which had not been seen before. When the Emperor was reunited with Rogel Dawn, he regained not only a lost son, but the strength of a star-spanning society already forged into a tool of war. Rogel Dawn was possessed of a single-minded energy tempered by a reserved and stoic nature. During rare shows of emotion, he was capable of shaking the ground. His cold rage is said to have held battlements as much as the arms of those standing upon them. Dawn was also an idealist. To him, the reasons he fought were as important as the outcomes of his efforts, and he believed utterly in the dream of the Imperium. When he fought, he did so neither bombast nor humility, but with a frightening and confident competence. Always balanced and methodical, his every blow a precision calculation of force. Rogel Dawn's was perhaps the greatest strategic mind in the galaxy. However, he was blunt and uncompromising in both his ideals and their expression, his manner often vexing as much as admirable. For all his unsubtle statesmanship and his unbending nature, he was named the Praetorian of Terra, and Horus the War Master, a balance of power upon which the course of history would turn. So yeah, those are one of the legions I chose. I have always liked the Imperial Fists. I particularly like Rogel Dawn, especially his depiction in If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device, because that's brilliant. So allow me to find, I believe they are I'm going to go out on a whim and say they're the 15th. I was going to say 18th. I was close. So, the second legion I chose, which was the first one I chose between these two. I think this was the easiest for me to decide to want to do. The 15th Legionis Astartes, 1,000 Sons. So, I'll read you this bit then, shall I? Betrayal is a child of many sires. Power, hate, vengeance, shame, guilt, bitterness, viciousness, callousness, all have played their part in the fall of those who turned on the Emperor. But to this list, two more must be added: hubris and blindness. While other legions walked into infamy at their own choosing, the 1,000 Sons were plunged into that state, first by their own pride, second by the treachery of those who they trusted, and third by the Imperium itself. The 1,000 Sons are a Space Marine legion bound up with occult lore, mysticism, and otherworldly powers of the Psyche. It was these esoteric arts of war that made it one of the most formidable legions, but also one of the most distrusted, and would eventually see it subject to the Emperor's judgment, tainted by mutation and touched by the warp. The fall of the 1,000 Sons seemed certain in retrospect, but that certainly isn't false. Another path might have waited for the 15th Legion had fate not been so cruel. As it is, the story of the 1,000 Sons is one not of darkness, but of a light that drew a legion and Primarch higher and higher, until they could no longer see the boundaries of obedience left far behind them. Their Primarch is Magnus the Red, or Magnus the Nerd. I like Magnus. I love Magnus. I think TTS Magnus is superior to actual canon lore Magnus. I prefer the comedy spin-off version of him. I think he's really funny, really relatable, and I'm all down for TTS Magnus. The Cognomen, Prior, none. Their observed strategic tendencies: psychic warfare, precision assaults, misdirection, lore culling, macro coordination, and multi-theatre campaigns. Noteworthy domains: Prospero, and their allegiance is Traitoris Perdita. Signs and portents. The 15th was among the last in the line of the creation of the Legionis Astartes. The conquest of Terra was already complete. Luna had fallen, and the firstborn legions had started to bring the rest of the Sol system to heel. It was a time of transition, a time of endings as well as beginnings, and into this time the 15th Legion were born. Strange portents and ill omens surrounded the creation of the Legion. Its aspirants would be free from flaw, drawn from the Archimedean... What the fuck is that name? Sorry. The Achaemenid? I'm going to say Achaemenid Empire. That is, wow, there are a few words that make me stumble, but that, wow. 40k, I've been reading it for years and years. It still never fails to trip me up when it comes to reading, eh? The enclaves of the Fire Lords of Oas and the Kashai domain on Terra, realms known for the stability and ancient purity of their bloodlines. In the first years of the Great Crusade, the reputation and strength of the Legion grew at an accelerated pace. It reaped multiple victories, and often fought alongside brother legionnaires, being held high in esteem by even the savage 6th and iconoclasts of the 17th Legions. And I have an itchy eye. My eyelid was itchy. That's a strange place to have an itch. A decade after the Great Crusade spilled beyond Seoul, the first of the Thousand Sons began to openly manifest potent psychic abilities. These, it is thought, were the result of an aberration in their gene seed, which heightened psychic ability and unlocked even latent sensitivities to the warp. These abilities would further shape the Legion, giving rise to some of its most notable warriors, but also introducing instability and mutation into its ranks in the form of the so-called flesh change. This horrific and fatally degenerative mutation was triggered by loss of control while channeling psychic power, and afflicted the Legion in great numbers until its rising strength of tens of thousands was reduced to a mere 1,000 legionaries. The flesh change was a closely guarded secret of the Thousand Sons, and though mutation was far from uncommon in the galaxy, its link to the rising psychic powers of the Legion did not go unnoticed. The condemnations and calls for the Legion to be expunged for its impurity grew in intensity and strength as the Thousand Sons withered. Fate, however, had different plans for the Legion. A psychic brotherhood. In remaking the Legion, Magnus created the Prosperine cults. Each cult specialized in a single strand of psychic power, and every psyker of manifest power within the Legion belonged to a cult which mirrored their foremost ability. The Pavoni concerned themselves with the interaction of the etheric and living flesh. Biomancers, they were flesh shapers and remakers, and their initiates could channel the powers of the warp to harden their flesh against damage, boil the blood of their enemies, and even to heal the flesh and bones of their own bodies. Deeply connected to the processes of life, the Pavoni were often said to hold the heart and the passions of the Legion, and in matters of doctrine, oratory, and belief, their adepts often dominated. The Raptora were masters of bending physical reality to their will, employing psychokinesis to control fundamental forces such as gravity. They could conjure shields of invisible energy, crush metal with their hands, and summon storms of debris to flay their foes. Many of the Raptora were also among the Legion's most gifted theoreticians and scholars, noted for the coldness and cleanness of their reasoning and their logic. The Corvidae were soothsayers and augurs who bent their abilities to touch the flow of time and consequence. Perhaps the most subtle of all the cults, it was said by their fellows that the Corvidae could read the past in a dying man's breath, could glimpse far-distant possibilities, and even manipulate the flow of one second to another by the force of their minds alone. The mark of the Corvidae was also the mark of the Legion's greatest strategists and generals, and it is no coincidence that Ahriman, chief librarian of the Thousand Sons and foremost of its leaders at the dawning of the Horus Heresy, was Magister Templi of the Corvidae. So these are the guys whose colour scheme is like red, gold, a bit of white, to excuse the clicky clacking of my ice cubes. But I must refresh. And the colour scheme here is like, instead of like a blood red for the blood angels, unsurprisingly, it's more like a candy red. And I actually found a really easy and really nice way to get this candy red. You spray a base layer of gold And then you go over it with this red paint. I'll introduce it in a bit when I actually get to the painting. And it just makes the most fantastic results. It's great, it really is. But it is one of the reasons I chose these guys, other than, well, there are many reasons I chose 1,000 Suns. 1, I like Magnus the Red. 2, I like their colour scheme. 3, I like psychics. I like psychic legions, like the Blood Angels, my favourite ever. They are also psychers, they have very powerful psychers. And I like their story as kind of... I don't want to say I'm one of those people who think that Magnus did nothing wrong, but like, he's not as culpable as the other traitor Primarchs in my mind. And I think if there were any legion who might be redeemed, it might have been the 1,000 Suns. Obviously not so much anymore, because they're all dust, but yeah, they're not exactly redeemable now in the modern 40k era. But back here, redeemable. But anyway, let me continue with this last bit. The Athenian Secrets were bound to the workings and manipulations of the mind and thought. Both subtle and powerful telepaths, they held the legion together in battle, channeling orders and intent seamlessly into the minds of its warriors, forming a communications network unbreakable and unparalleled in scope. Because of this, it often seemed not an army of individuals, but of machines, driven by a single, indomitable will. Outside of the clamour of battle, many of the cult were given to, that's another word I don't know, asceticism and withdrawn contemplation, a consequence of their contact with the thoughts of others, perhaps. They were often also used as emissaries to other legions and factions of the wider Imperium. I really am very thirsty, I'm sorry. Again, not in that way. Stop it. The Pyre's abilities expressed themselves in a terrifying manner. The control and creation of fire. Their thoughts could become hellstorms, burning as bright as a star's fury. And their touch could reduce metal to slag in mere moments. Most bellicose of all the cults, the Pyre excelled in destruction, and their smouldering pride beat with the heat of the legion's martial heart. As well as relying on formidable psychic gifts, the Legion was still a thoroughly drilled and trained body of Space Marine warriors, and excelling in almost every aspect of conventional warfare. When combined with their etheric ability, the Legion was a terrifying weapon indeed. In addition to the core structures of the Legion, there were orders which existed both within and beyond its circumference. Known by the symbol of a poised serpent, the Order of Ruin was a sect of mystics said to be obsessed with numerology and the hidden structure of the universe. The Order of the Jackal had a presence in every other structure and faction of the 1,000 Suns, including the other orders. The role of this small order was twofold: to remember the dead and to raise the next generation of warriors for the Legion. It is only by extrapolation and the interpretation of scraps of intelligence that the wider Imperium knows of the existence of the Third Order, the Order of Blindness, thought to have been headed by Magnus's equerry and former tutor, Ammon. The so-called Hidden Ones appear to have been an order of infiltrators, spies and interrogators and scouts deployed to gather intelligence. After the use of psychic powers by the legions was forbidden by the Edict of Nicaea, Magnus and his 1,000 sons withdrew to their homeworld, ostensibly chastised by the Emperor. There, Magnus, via psychic means, discerned the danger Horus posed to the Emperor and the fledgling Imperium, and tried to warn the master of mankind. As events transpired, the warning failed, and only contributed to the War Masters exploiting the opportunity of the Space Wolf's censure of Magnus the Red to eliminate a rival in the Thousand Suns. The Legion's future would be defined by the cataclysmic battle for Prospero. One of my favourite parts of the heresy, the battle for Prospero. And to quote, again, the series TTS, Lehman Russ, another Primarch, broke Magnus's spine, like Bane style. And when this is brought up in TTS, Magnus turns around screaming, "I punched out one of his hearts, why does no one ever remember that?" Which is impressive, to punch out one of Lehman Russ's hearts. I mean, just saying. But speaking of Magnus the Red, this is a little bit about him. The Legion's homeworld of Prospero was a polished jewel glittering alone in the long dark of night, while many worlds which had cradled the lost Primarchs, it seemed, were often unremittingly soaked in darkness, cruelty, and blood. Prospero had achieved an ascendancy over such barbarity. This was the place where the Primarch Magnus the Red came to settle, within Tizca, the city of light, and citadel of reason on Prospero. There he absorbed the lessons of the city's masters, and soon exceeded their skill in every area of psychic discipline, scholarship, and endeavour. Tizca flowered as never before under Magnus, the Crimson King of its empire of dreams. Magnus was the tallest of the Primarch siblings, a giant with reddish skin and possessing only one eye. He was erudite and considered in his manner and rhetoric, earning a reputation for wisdom amongst his brothers. He was also an extremely potent psyker, second only to the Emperor in power. Magnus reunited with his legion at the critical moment as it was overcome by the flesh change. Only his vast intellect and power as a psyker allowed him to save his legion from certain doom. He turned all of his power, law, and learning to discovering a way to lift the curse which was killing his sons. And though he was successful, his cure came at a great cost, and the Legion was forever changed by his hand. So yeah, those are the Legions, and I realise that I have talked for a very, very long time about them. So what I might do is split this up into two parts. So here is the reading, me nerding out, and the next bit will probably be a lot less talking. Maybe I am a chatterbox sometimes when I start to nerd out, so maybe I won't shut up. But I do hope you've enjoyed listening to me rambling along in the background, and I hope you stay with me for the next one, where I start to actually paint these colour schemes. But thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hey there, thank you for watching this video, but just before it ends, I'd like to take this chance to thank all my disciples of Jesus Christ, patrons. If you'd also like to support me, you can check the links below. But until the next time, take care of yourself, have a good day or night, and I'll see you in the next video.